Model Making Guru is sponsored by emodels.co.uk, your one-stop shop for all your model making needs. emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome. Hey everyone, it's Foxx from Model Making Guru here. Hello and welcome to part 3B of our Warhammer Conquest from Hachette Partworks video build series. If you haven't already watched the previous episodes, 1, 2 and 3A, there's a thing up here now, go and watch them. If you have watched them, you'll know that so far we've done issues 1 to 6 and we've got everything up to this point. Everything's built and primed and ready. You'll also know, if you have watched them, that I'm filming this for the absolute beginner, someone who's subscribed to the magazine or just buying it one by one, but they've never built or painted anything before and they want to build a cool army. And what I hope to do by the end of this series is give you a Warhammer Imperial army and a Warhammer Chaos army and lots of scenery, all nicely painted. Now, just in case you haven't yet watched those other videos in the series so far, I'm going to be following the steps in the magazine. I'm going to be filming this for the absolute beginner, but I may veer off here and there. Occasionally I'll do little things that aren't suggested in the magazine. For example, you can see these guys are painted black. They're not painted, they're actually primed. Priming is something the magazine doesn't tell you to do. I've primed all these guys ready for painting. In this episode, we're going to get all these guys painted up using the steps in the magazine, more or less. Now, where I do veer off from the instructions, don't panic, I will tell you and will explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I'll keep you informed as we go along. However, there is one situation where I'm going to completely ignore the magazine utterly, and that is for this chap. Lieutenant Calcius, or Lieutenant Calcium as I'm going to call him from now on, or Captain Calcium. I'm going to ignore the magazine completely with this chap and I'm going to paint him my own way, whereas all the other guys and all the ones that are to come will be painted following the magazine. They'll come out at sort of Games Workshop tabletop quality paint jobs. This will be my own style. It'll be display quality, lots more complicated techniques. We're going to use more products than you actually get in the subscription, so we're going to use products that you'd have to go to the Warhammer store and buy, and he's going to look fantastic. Now, if you want to, you can just do whatever I show on him and apply it to the rest of the army, but I'm going to break him out into his own little section each episode, just showing the advanced techniques. So you can either follow what's in the magazine and I'll take you through it and I might make some changes here and there, or you can ignore that bit, watch what I do on him and apply that to the rest of them. It's just so that those of you out there who are a little more experienced have still got something to learn. So if that's what we're going to do, by the end of this episode, we'll have all these guys painted up to wherever it tells us to at the end of issue 6. I'm not going to jump ahead with him, with Lieutenant Calcium. I'm going to get him to wherever these guys are, just looking a bit better. So I'll go through quickly what you need, and then we'll crack on. So once you've got all your miniatures primed and ready, they're all up there out of the way, first thing you need is the paint. Now, this is for all the figures we're going to paint apart from Lieutenant Calcium. Obviously he's going to need a few more bits, but for everybody else we're going to need the paints we've received so far in issues 1 to 6, and that is Macragge Blue. We're going to need some Lead Beltra, Abaddon Black, Bugman's Glow, Death Guard Green, and the beautiful Retributive Armor. We're also going to need water to clean your brush. Now, talking of brushes, so I have a small selection here that I'm going to use for this episode. Now, you can get whatever brushes you want. Don't use the brush that comes with issue 1. It's terrible. Throw it away, burn it, make it a paint stirrer, or, you know, a back scratcher. Just get rid of it. It's terrible. I can recommend these two though. The Army Painter is a fantastic range of brushes. I'm going to be using the Regiment because it's my go-to catch-all brush. It's a nice pointy tipped brush. I've also got a selection of Citadel brushes. I have 2 base brushes, a small round tip one for painting majority of the figures, and a large base brush just for getting the real initial basic colours on there. Where I just want to paint everything blue or green, I can just use something bigger to get the paint on there. And I've also got a crappy old shade brush which has not been looked after, and that's purely for getting paint from the pot to my wet palette. Speaking of wetness, of course, I will need some water to clean my brushes, and my trusty wet palette. Now, I do mention wet palettes in previous episodes, but if you want to know what a wet palette is, why you want one, and how you can make one, I'll put a link here to a video that tells you exactly that. You want to use a wet palette. And one other thing you'll see me use is a Citadel painting handle. Now, don't panic if you haven't got one of these. You will get one free if you're subscribed. It's just a device that you can put your figure into, and And then when you're painting it, you're not having to handle the figure. Now I say you will get one of these free if you're a subscriber to the magazine, not to me. But I don't know when you'll get one. You can grab them for a £5, just a £5 from your local Warhammer store. However, if you want to, you can just hold the figure by the base, so you're not actually handling the figure while you're painting him. Or if you've got an old paint pot or a pill pot or something like that, a pill jar, you can use a bit of blue tack and just splonk him down on there, and then you can paint him by holding the paint pot or the pill jar or whatever you want to blue tack him to. So you don't have to go and get the big painting handle, but you can if you want to. Right, so that's everything I'm going to use. I will go into more products when I do Captain Calcium, because he'll have some more exclusive bits and bobs that aren't provided in the magazines, but I'll do that later on in a separate section. First of all, let's crack on with the Space Marines! Now, for the majority of this project, unless I say otherwise, I'm going to be using my wet palette, which I've explained before, and I'll put a link up in the top right to show you how to use it, but it's basically a permanently moist palette. So basically, get your paint, shake the living poop out of it, make sure it's all mixed together, pop it open, not quite as slow as me, I'm a bit feeble obviously. You've got a nice scoopy thing on the lid there, you can get the paint from there. Get yourself an old crappy brush that all you're going to use it for is to get paint on your wet palette. All you're going to use this brush for. Doesn't matter if you get it covered in paint. You're not going to use this brush for anything else. Get your paint on there, give yourself a goodly amount, get most of it out. Close the pot, and there you go. Don't ever take paint from the pot, Chris. Yes, if you want the best finish possible, you need to make sure you thin your paints with a little bit of water. Using a wet palette for most colours will actually thin it enough that you can just use it straight from the wet palette. Although sometimes you might need to add a little bit of water. So let's crack on now. I'm going to be using my Citadel base brush. You will get one of these, if I remember rightly, in a later magazine, but I'm using this because it's big and it's fast. It's also nice and soft. If you've not got a Citadel brush, don't panic. Just get a large, sort of soft brush that allows you to paint a lot fast. Now, the paint should be thin enough with just the water from the wet palette, so I can just take a little bit on the brush and get it on there. Now, the trick is, don't put a massive amount on the brush. Just a little touch on the front, and then spread the paint around. Don't get a ton of paint on the brush and blob it on, and then get another ton of paint and blob that on. As you can see here, this is all before I've reloaded the brush. I've painted that much. So you get a little bit like that much, and the trick is to spread it round. Now, the first coat will look like ass. It'll be semi-transparent. Even though it's a base paint, it's quite thick. It'll look patchy. You'll see the black underneath showing through. That's fine. Once you've done this first coat, go ahead, give it 10 or 15 minutes to dry, and then do a second coat. But again, I can't stress enough, spread it round. And there we go, a nice solid coat of blue. Yes, I say it will vary depending on whether you need one coat or two coats. Depends how thick your paint comes off the wet palette. And you will find using that big brush makes life a lot easier than using a small brush for getting coverage quickly, thickly, but not so thick that it gets rid of detail, and smoothly. Now, what's next? Next, we're going to go for Abaddon Black. Now, we may jump around with the colours when we do this, so pay attention to what colours we're doing. And also, you notice I've left the combat knife and the bolt pistol unpainted there. Very good reason for that. We are going to be jumping off the recommended paint order when we do these, but I'll explain that as we go along. Next up, though, as I say, is Abaddon Black, and that's for things like all the pouches, the belt, the holsters, the scabbard there, and the undersuit that's underneath the power armor. So basically all this webbing and strapping, belts, and the undersuit. Let's get that done. Okay, the trick with this kind of detail painting now is to make sure that your brush has a nice strong point on it. So smaller sort of layer brush if you're using Games Workshop brushes. I'm using the Army Painter Regiment brush, but any kind of small pointy ended brush is fine. Make sure you've got some nice soft bristles. Just go carefully, take your time. Now you can see here I am going over some parts that are going to be gold later on, but that's fine, I can touch those later. But I am trying my best not to get any black paint on the bits that are going to be blue. It doesn't matter if you do go a bit messy and make a mistake, don't panic, just wait till it's dried and then go back and correct in with the blue later on. So if I paint a bit that needs to be blue, if I go outside the line, I can just go and tidy it up later. Just make sure the black's fully dried first before you go and tidy up. And just take your time. Some areas are hard to get to, so you'll have to go and do tidy up anyway. And if you watch professionals when they do their painting, they never show you them going back and tidying up. But I can guarantee you, everybody does it. So that's all the black parts done, all the pouches and straps and so on. Just take your time painting any details like this. If you do make any messes, don't worry, just let the paint dry for 5 minutes and then go back and tidy up with the colour that you've messed up on top of. So if you get some black on the blue, give it 5 minutes, go back over with the blue. Now you notice here I didn't do much on the gun, I've left them still in primer. We're going to get to those now. Now it's time for the silver colour for the lead belcher. Now I do have to apologise if we go in and out of focus while we do this. Filming figures, really hard. So what I'm going to paint on here, and this is optional, I'm going to paint, for example, things like the belt buckles. I'm going to do those in lead belcher. I'm going to paint the entirety of the weapon, whether it's a bolt rifle or a bolt pistol. Paint all of it at this stage. We'll come back and do the other bits later. If anybody's got a blade, like a power sword or a combat knife, paint the blade. I'm only painting the blade on the blades, not the actual handles, if you know what I mean. The blade on the swords. I'm going to paint this bit on the back of his power pack. Now this is optional, I don't think you're supposed to paint this bit, but I like making this bit a silver colour. So just work your way around there, and then you've obviously got the vents on the back of the power pack as well, the thrusters. Make sure to paint those. And any other details that you want to be silver, the tubes on the side of the helmets are also painted in lead belcher, so just take your time and get those painted up. Okay, and that's all the silver shiny parts done. You can see those looking pretty spanky. Next up though is my favourite bit, and it's doing the gold trim. Yes! Now, keep in mind you've got two different sets of dudes here. You've got Space Marines and you've also got some Reavers. The Reavers will have less gold trim, so on the Reaver you'll just have a pauldron and maybe the thing on the chest and a couple of little tiny bits. But on the Space Marines, everything is bling. It's all about bling on these guys. So we've got this strip around the pauldrons here. That's on both. We have the Aquila on the chest. We have, in this guy's case, we've got this reliquary box with a Kian skull in there. So the box is going to be gold. We also have, there's a skull on his bolt pistol holster. There is a little tiny skull on his helmet. And then there's the Aquila on his bolt rifle. There's only one, I think. The Aquila on there. And on this chap, I think that's all the gold bits. I think that's all of them. So we need to get those painted. So it's time to get out of the Retributive Armor, which is my favourite paint in the world. Got it on my wet palette. Get your brush to the point. And the trick with this stuff is to go slowly. Now on the pauldrons, if you get your brush at 45 degrees, you can drag it along this raised strip. And it will just nicely paint that raised bit there. Don't worry if you splob and get paint elsewhere, it's fine. You can always come back and touch up with the Macragge blue later. But this is the easy bit. So you're just doing it, I say 45 degrees, it's more like, I don't know, it's perpendicular to the surface. You want to run the edge of the brush basically. So you're not going like this, you're running the brush along that edge. Now it will take 2 coats. One coat won't be enough, but you want to work your way around slowly. For the Aquila, again, just take your time, get in there with your brush. You can use the point here, but just go very slowly. Try and again use the side of your brush as much as possible just to pick up the raised edges, and that way you'll keep it neat and tidy to the edges of the feathers. But if you do go over like I've just done there, don't worry, just go back and tidy up with the Macragge blue once the gold is dry. So you just need to work your way along now and get all these details golded in. It's my favourite bit. Okay, and there you can see now we've got a bit more goldy bling going on. It's looking kind of cool. Now when you are painting details like this, don't worry too much if you don't get edges perfectly crisp and smooth, especially things like around the pauldron here. don't worry too much. You'll see there's still a little bit of a rough edge here and there because of the raised lip. That's fine, because a step we'll do in the next episode when we start using shades will actually hide all that. So you don't need to have everything 100% perfect. Some mistakes will be hidden. What's next? Well, only two last little things to do on these guys next. First, we've got to paint the grenades, the cracked grenades and frag grenades, and then we've got a little bit of flesh to paint. Now on the Reavers, the cracked grenades and frag grenades are on the chest plate here. I'll put it up on camera. But on the normal Space Marines, they might be around the back on the belt somewhere, so just have a look around. But on the Reavers, they're on the chest plate on either side. And for this, we're just going to go in with some Death Guard green and carefully paint those in. Now again, before, if you make a mess, don't worry, just get them all green and go back and tidy up. And then when you've painted the main body of it green, go back and paint the pin and the ring and the handle in the lead belcher, just to get the silver look back again. And there we have it, some nice grenades painted on him. I did the strap round the grenades in black and lead belcher just for the rings and the bits at either side. And on the one on his butt, you've got again the Death Guard green for the grenade and the lead belcher for the little handle. And I've done the same on the other guys that have got grenades as well. So what's next? Well, there's only one more thing to do now, and that is to paint the flesh parts of some of these guys. Now, there's only a couple of them. And what we're going to use is Bugman's Glow. Now, Bugman's Glow is not necessarily a flesh colour straight off. It's not actually the colour of the skin, but it's going to be the base colour upon which we'll build the flesh tones later on in future episodes. So Bugman's Glow is the basic flesh colour. A little bit on the brush, and it's just literally painting the head. Again, thin it with a little bit of water, as always, just to make sure it's not going to leave lots of brush marks, and just carefully work your way around. And with the fleshy part painted and the hair tidied up because I made a right mess of it, that is us up to date. We've now reached the issue 6 step of painting these guys. Now you will know I haven't done anything with the weapon, I haven't done the black parts on the weapon, and there's a good reason for that. I did say we'd veer away from the instructions every now and then, and I'm going to show you a different way to paint the black casing on the weapon. But we're going to do that next time, because I am going to stick to the products we receive for the majority of these guys. So we haven't yet received the product that I want to use to do this part of the weapon. So we're going to do that probably next time, I think, or maybe the time after, I'm not sure. Depends when the thing I want turns up. So that's where we're going to leave these guys for now. Now, I still do have, of course, Lieutenant Calcium. Now, what I'm going to do with him, I was going to do a part in this episode, but I'm actually going to break him out into a separate episode, just because I need to get this episode up for you ASAP. I'll focus on him in a separate episode, and I'll probably do a similar thing for the Chaos side as well, and we'll probably do a similar thing for one of the vehicles. So expect to see a separate episode for Lieutenant Calcium and his friends. But for these guys, this is the Space Marines done, so now let's go and have some really fun times. Let's get on with these puppies. Yeah, it's time to get really filthy with Papa Nurgle's troops, the Chaos Marines and the Poxwalkers. This is going to be so much fun. Yes! Okay, so let's get these gnarly dudes all painted up. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to start with a coat of Death Guard green, and I'm going to do these and the Poxwalkers all at the same time. I'll show you them separately where I need to, but if I don't show you something on the Poxwalker, assume it's the same for both, because they kind of use all the same colours. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with Death Guard green. I've got a little bit on my wet palette, and for this I'm going to use a large base brush, but basically as long as it's a reasonably large brush and soft, like a Citadel base brush or your monster brush if you're using the Army Painter set, or something like that, just something large. If you use the brush that came with the magazines, this will take you forever. So what you want to do, you want to do this without thinking too much, just go straight in, get the paint on there. Because it's on the wet palette, it's automatically thinned with a bit of water. But if you aren't using a wet palette, just add a touch of water to the paint to thin it down. And what I want you to do here is not be careful. The reason I'm using a big brush, and the reason I've thinned it down a little bit with a touch of water, is because I want it to be patchy. These guys are supposed to be filthy, dirty, and riddled with disease and plague, so we're not going to look for a perfectly solid coat of green here. So the first coat's going to look terrible. That's fine. What you want to do is get this first coat on, and then when it's dried, go over with the second coat, but brush quickly like this. Don't be careful, because what you want by the end is to have a little bit of unevenness in the colour, which is why I'm not being careful here at all. So go ahead and get all your dudes painted, and then we'll get the next step going. Again, do the same on the poxwalkers, and then we'll see how we come out with that. Okay, that's now done, and as you can see, it's looking pretty cool. Now, like I said, I did a couple of coats, and I didn't worry too much about getting a beautiful, beautiful solid coat of green like I did on the Space Marines, where I wanted to get a nice solid coat of Macragge blue. There's a little bit of patchiness on here, not much, but a little bit, and that's fine. Like I said, these guys are supposed to be disgusting and filthy, so anything that, because it's quite a transparent paint, anything that helps show the black through the green a little bit in here, in patches here and there, is a good thing. It just makes it look a bit more organic. And I've done exactly the same on the Poxwalker, as you can see. Again, not the most precise paint coat in the world, but a little bit of patchiness here and there is absolutely fine. What's next? Next, we're going to jump around a bit. We're not going to follow the magazine order precisely. Next, we're going to go for the silver parts, and for that we're going to use lead belcher. And on this guy, on these Plague Marines, it's things like any chainmail here. Here's the sword, obviously, got chainmail there. We've got the weapon on the back, the plasma thingy, plasma caster, is that what it is? I can't remember now. This plasma weapon on the back. I'm going to paint the whole thing lead belcher, the whole weapon, but we'll do other things later on. And for him, that's really about it. On the other guys, you've got the plague caster here, or whatever it's called, this thing. I'm going to paint the whole of that weapon lead belcher, and we'll do other touches later. And on these poxwalkers, you've got a few little bits. You've got chains here and there. Some of them have a little bit of chainmail. With these guys, it's really up to you. You can kind of paint whichever bits you want, really. Just have more fun with those. Have some fun with those and make those up. You're supposed to do all the buckles and belt straps in the gold colour, but I'm going to do them in lead belcher just because these are supposed to be cheesy, scruffy things. I'm not going to give them all gold bling everywhere. A few bits and bobs. But yeah, these guys, you can just make it. I mean, with any of these guys, that's the one thing about this. What I'm showing you on here, you can actually just, veer off and paint other bits different colours. It's entirely up to you. That's half the fun. Anyway, I've got some lead belcher on my palette. I'm going in here with my regiment brush. You want to go for a smaller brush for this. Try and be as neat as you can, as always. We're just doing the chainmail here. Give it a good thickly coat. Might need 1 or 2 coats. But just try and be as neat as you can. If you do paint anything that's not supposed to be silver, like the green armour, then just go back and touch it up later. Now, a word of information here. Word of information, that's a nonsense statement. There's a bit in the magazine where it tells you to paint some things black, like these, in I think part 2. And it mentions primer. And it says, we're going to paint some of these things black, ready for bits later on. And this is called priming. That's absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Don't bother. It's not called priming. Priming is when you prime with a primer. What they're doing is just using a normal paint to paint some of the parts black, ready for later on. That's not priming. A primer, like we said earlier before, is something designed to grip to bare plastic and give the paint something to attach to. Black paint is not primer. Black primer is primer. Now, because we've already primed this model, because we ignored the magazine and we actually used primer, because we've done that, you don't need to worry about that step. They're doing it because they want to paint some bits later on different colours. We're going to paint those bits different colours anyway. But we'll just leave them as whatever colour is on there for now. Like, the horns, knocking the camera, my apologies. Things like the horns and bones and stuff, they're green right now, that's fine. We'll go into the different colours later when they are sent to us. So ignore all the bits where it says paint this bit black. It's not priming. They're just trying to get around the fact that they can't send you a can of primer. Anyway, let's get all these done. Okay, and that's the silver parts done. You can see there, I forgot to mention to paint the little thrusters on the power pack on the back. And I did paint the whole of the plasma weapon silver. You can see I've got a bit of the lead belcher on the tentacles there, but it doesn't matter because we're going to paint those a different colour anyway. So that's those bits done. There's not a lot to do on him. I painted the whole of that. That's now all lead belcher. And I also got the little bits done on the Poxwalker here, but there's only a couple of bits. It's just really the buckle on his belt and that chain there. There's some other bits on some of the other Poxwalkers. And again, in the magazine it'll show you painting some of the things like buckles and lasps on straps and things gold. I'm just going to paint them silver because gold's a bit over the top and poncy for Poxwalkers. That's that done. What is next? Next we're going to do the fleshy tentacly bits. Now there are lots of other colours to come in the future, as with most of these things. There's lots of colours to come yet that we haven't received, so these are all like foundation colours. So for things like tentacles and the flesh, we're going to use Bugman's Glow. So I'm going to get some of that. And all we're going to do on this guy, on the Marines, what you're doing is just painting things like knocking the camera, of course, knocking the camera, yes. Painting things like tentacliness. So tentacles down here. There's got a few of the little tiny ones by the feet, so keep your eye open for those. There's lots of bigger ones. Where's the bigger one? There's a big one somewhere. A big one there. Coming out the side, so make sure you get all these painted. He's also got his entire face, which is flesh tones. Now, as I say, it does say in the magazine to, well, on the poxwalkers to paint the horns black. Don't bother with that. Just paint the bits you need to be fleshy. If there are any sort of bones sticking out or horns, you can go ahead and paint them Bugman's Glow if you want, or just try and keep the paint off those. But we'll sort those out later with different colours. Hopefully, I don't know which colours come yet. Hopefully, with colours in future issues. So go ahead and get the skin. So we've got things like tentacles, the head on the poxwalkers. Oddly, these are going to be kind of flesh coloured, but in the magazine it tells you just to paint the pustules and the buboes, plaguey things, which are just the little blobs and blebs here and there. So just painting, get a good point on your brush. Let me just do that now. Good point on your brush, and you're just painting pustules and blebs and bits of diseased area. I don't know how we're going to get these from green to the sort of pallid flesh colour later on. Because if you look at the photos of the finished painted ones, they're all kind of pallidy flesh colours. So I don't know how they're going to do that. But for now, we'll follow the magazine and see. We can always strip them down and start again if it all goes wrong. So just go around the poxwalkers, just pick out any little blebs and blobs and pustules and buboes that you want to be painted the flesh colour, and we'll get those painted in the Bugman's Glow. And again, just make sure you've got a nice point on your brush. So I'll go and get those done, and we'll move on to the next step. Bulbous lumps. So there we go, looking a lot more fleshy. Yeah, it's looking pretty cool. I've taken the arm off because I'm going to need to get to some bits around the back of that arm, but you can just see there around the back as well. Helps to get around the back of these tentacles. Now with these guys, you don't need to glue the arms on. They stay on really well, and you can get them on quite easily. I did have trouble with the Primaris Marines getting their arms on, which is why they're all glued together. But that's him done with the flesh. With the poxwalkers, it's really just the little blebs and buboes and things all over there. Again, I don't know how they're going to do the whole, because the whole thing should be sort of pallid flesh coloured. So I suspect what they're going to do is when we get some other colours later on in later issues, they're going to say, right, now we're going to repaint the whole thing. And I'll be like, oh, really? Because I know how I'd paint this. But it involves colours that we don't yet have. And like I said from the start, this is a beginners series. And for beginners, we're just going to follow you? That's not a real word. We're going to follow the magazines, adjust things a little bit, but we're going to stick to the paints and stuff that the magazines have sent us, apart from the advanced technique ones. So I don't know what's in future issues and when we'll actually get to repaint these, if we do, but we'll find out. We'll find out. So anyway, he is all done. So what is next? Next is my favourite bit. It's the gold. Yes, Retributive Armor time. And what we're going to do is we're going to go around and do gold on all the trim, all the little trim bits of piping. Do refer to the magazine to see which bits need to be gold, but there's piping all around the armour. There's the fly symbol on his knee, and on some other ones they've got the little sort of three-lobe chaos symbol, Nurgle symbol. But there's piping all around the armour pieces. We have, I'm not going to do these skulls because they're going to be, or shall I do the skulls? I don't know. I'll see if in the magazine if we're supposed to do those gold, because they're either going to be gold or skull coloured. I think I'm doing them gold, I think. And again, some flies on there, and these little fly pendants need to be gold. There's nothing on the weapon, I don't think. There are a couple of bits on the plague caster, or whatever that is, that need to be gold. But again, just refer to the magazine to have a look and see which bits need to be gold on there. And there's these little things hanging down, these little sensors hanging down. I'm going to paint them gold. So, got the Retributive Armor on the wet palette. Let's just get this done. Again, get your brush to a fine point and just carefully work your way along. This is a really nice colour that really conforms well to wherever you put it. So just go slowly and be neat and tidy. If you do mess up, just go back in with the original colour that's underneath. Okay, so that's the goldy bit done. He's looking pretty spanky now. Not for long, because he looked filthy and dirty by the time he's done. Yeah, but he's looking a bit more spanky now. Now, obviously you need to go and do the gold trim on the other Marines as well. On the Foxx Walker, there wasn't any gold on the one I'm painting for you guys. But have a look on the other ones. Some of them may have these little fly pendants on them. So make sure you paint those gold. Any other details you want to be gold. At the end of the day, you can kind of paint them however you want. It's all just for fun. So that's all the gold trim done. Next we're going to do some blackety black. Now what we're going to do, as I said before, if you go through the magazine, it mentions painting some things like the horns on these Foxx Walkers black, priming them for future paints. Nonsense. We've already primed them when we rattle canned it with Chaos Black. We don't need to prime them black, so you can ignore those bits. However, there are some bits that are actually going to be black, like for example the belts and the pouches. So we just need to get those bits painted. On the Spec Marine, or on the Plague Marine, there's just things like little hoses. There's a little hose on the side of his, get my brush, little hose on the side of his head there. There's hoses on the back of the power pack here. I don't know if they're supposed to be fleshy or not, but I'll paint them black. And I think that's it on there. Can't see anything else. But any like hoses and things like that, just paint them black for now. We can always paint them a different. Oh, there's one there on the back of the power fist. One back there, so we'll paint those black. So what we're going to do is get our Abaddon black and get painting. So let's get it done. So Abaddon black is a bit of a pain to paint with. It's a strange colour, so just take your time. Make sure to add a little bit of water. Even if you've got it on a wet palette, I recommend adding a little touch of water to your brush first anyway, and just gently work your way across. It will take you at least 2 coats because it is a strange colour, this one. It's a strange paint. Okay, so that's all the black bits done. On the Plague Marine here, you can just see it's the tubing on his power fist arm thing. There's some tubing on his power pack there. And there was the undersuit, the bits between the armour and the undersuit that's visible, the sort of the pads on the inside of the power fist. Painted those black as well. Forgot to mention those bits. Just like on any other Space Marine, the bits, the undersuit bits, the rubbery undersuit. Yeah, make sure to check the other Plague Marines because they'll have different tubes and pipes to this guy. Also, I haven't painted any black on the weapon, and I did the same for the sort of, whatever the bolter is called for the other Plague Marine, and the big Plague Caster. I haven't done those yet, because again, like I said earlier on when I was doing the Space Marine, I'm going to show you a different technique for doing the black parts on the weapon, so I've just left that all silver for now. We've also got the Foxx Walker, and like I said, all I've done on that one is the belt, the leather belt, and the pouches at the back. Now do check the other ones because some of these guys have footwear, boots and things, and you need to paint those black. And basically, although you're ignoring the thing in the magazine that says to do prime, forget all that. Don't need to do that, that's nonsense. You do need to paint anything that's like a leather strap or a pouch or a boot or anything that's basically leather strapping and pouches, things like that. Make sure they're black. Now, only one thing left to do now, but I'm going to ask you to make me a quick promise. Painting this belt, it was a little bit tricky, even for me, because the edges weren't that crisp. They're a bit fuzzy around the edge, a bit soft. So I had to go back and forth and tidy up a few times to get them looking reasonably straight. Now I'm going to ask you to make me a promise, because remember I'm aiming this at beginners. When you're painting things, if you're supposed to get a nice clean edge to something, don't stress too much and don't panic if you can't get a nice straight edge. If you go a little bit outside the line, as it were. Don't worry too much, because we're going to do something in the next episode that's going to completely hide anything like that. So you don't need to make sure everything at this stage is painted 100% perfect, because in the next episode, like I say, we're going to show you shades, and shades hide all your sins. So get everything nice and neat as you can, but don't panic if, you know, some of your lines here and there are a little bit wobbly, because we've got a magic fix for that. So anyway, yes, there's one thing left to do now, and this is just something on the Foxx Walkers, not on the Plague Marines, and that's just to paint the clothing. Now, in the magazine, it has you paint all of these Macragge blue. Yeah, if you look at the pictures of the finished things, they're all different shades, like oranges and greys and light blues. I can only hope that later on we'll repaint these in different colours as we get new colours, because we do get an orange, it looks like. Because I don't want them all to have just Macragge blue, that's boring. They do come up with some fluff if you watch the videos on Warhammer TV where he says that because all these guys have been taken from Ultramar, the home of the Ultramarines, Macragge blue is a very popular colour and everybody wears Macragge blue. Yeah, that's just nonsense. They're just making that up because you're just painting everything Macragge blue. So I can only hope that later on everything is painted different colours. But for now, we'll follow the magazine. That's what we're doing. We're going to use the colours we have. So I've got some Macragge blue on my wet palette. Let's get this painted. So as always, just going in with my nice fine brush. I'm going to go in carefully and get that covered. It's going to take 2 coats. Again, adding a little bit of water to your paint. If you're using a wet palette with this colour, you don't need to. The wet palette should make it thin enough. But if you need to, you can. But it's always better to use thin coats than thick coats. Just make sure you go up to the edges. Now again, like I said a minute ago, don't panic about if you go over the edge anywhere. It's not a biggie. You can, if I say go over some of the black with the blue, I can go back with the black in a minute when this is dried and tidy up. With that done, it's time for the spinny thing, and basically everyone is now painted up to the end of issue 6. Well, I say everyone. I still need to go off and do the rest of the Plague Marines and Poxwalkers. I just wanted to get this episode out to you rather than you having to wait a few extra days while I paint everyone else. So sooner rather than later. But that is, like I say, I was painted up to the end of issue 6, and in the next episode we'll carry on from issue 7, where I'll be showing you how to use the most wonderful of toys, shades. All sins will be forgiven. Now, as you can see here, Lieutenant Calcius, I have to really force myself not to say Captain Calcium. Captain Calcium is still unpainted, but like I said earlier, we'll cover him in a standalone advanced technique painting video where I'll use techniques and methods a bit more advanced than they're going to show you in the magazines. Hopefully to a higher level of quality. You never know, I could screw it up. I'll probably do a few over the course of the series, maybe different figures, like maybe some of the key figures, just to make things interesting. Stay tuned. But that'll do us for today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Model Making Guru, strangely enough. And remember, if you'd like to help support this channel and keep it going, you can through my Patreon page, patreon.com/Model Making Guru. There's all kinds of rewards for helping out, and it's my lovely, lovely, adorable patrons that keep this channel afloat. So please, if you've got a minute, just pop along and have a look, see if you can help out. But until next time, go make something awesome, go be awesome. And I'll say to you, I'm waving. Every time I do a closing speech voiceover where there's no camera, I still do the wave as if I'm on camera. I'm an idiot. Oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, I'm so special. Go make something awesome. Go be awesome. And until next time, adios, amoebas. I'm doing the wave again. I'm still waving. Oh,